What's going on, and welcome back into FYF. Today we are talking Dynasty rookie trade targets. Now I know what you're thinking, right? Why are people trading rookies? We just had rookie drafts. It's Dynasty. There's always time to make moves. I don't care if your rookie draft was 2 weeks ago and somebody just took them. Send out offers. This is the time to do it before we get full rookie hype as we get into the meat of the preseason. We get into the regular season. They're only going to get harder to acquire. These are three guys I am excited about, I want on my teams, and they're all relatively cheap. I'm not going after the obvious guys. I'm not saying, trade for Drake London, trade for Garrett Wilson. Yeah, obviously do that. These are three guys that are going a little bit later that I'm excited about. So let's get into it. Number one on the list, it is David Bell. And I want to get David Bell on my teams, not for this season. I want David Bell for next year. I want to buy low while the Deshaun Watson suspension is in the air. Potentially he's playing with Jacoby Brissett. That's going to knock down his value. And a lot of guys in Dynasty, especially in, call it your Dynasty home leagues, people don't think super long term. A lot of guys are still treating it like a redraft league. And if that's somebody, or if somebody that rosters him is thinking that way, this is the time to go and attack. Obviously, right, David Bell was a third round draft pick, slipped into the third because of just a terrible combine, right? I don't care. I don't really care about the combine. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me. He was still drafted on day 2. He still had a 94th percentile breakout age, and he still put up just under 1,300 yards in his junior year, right? He's only 21, and to have that kind of resume is exactly what I want out of a guy that I really don't have to spend a ton to go and get, right? Again, this is not for this season. It's probably not going to be fun with Jacoby Brissett under center and maybe a couple games of Watson, depending how that shakes out. I'm thinking long term, when Amari Cooper's 29, when Deshaun Watson is going to play a full season. David Bell has the ability and the competition around him to kind of vault himself up to the wide receiver 1 potentially on the Browns in his second season. Amari Cooper is good. We know that. He's never been an alpha in terms of target share, right? You're looking at a guy that is topped out at 22.3% target share in his career. That was all the way back in 2016. It has been a long time since he has seen above a 22% target share, which is really what a good wide receiver 2 is going to give you. It's not what those true alphas give you. So David Bell, there's a ton of volume out there in that offense because Amari Cooper just doesn't demand a lot of it, and that sits well for David Bell long term right now. Now, if you're thinking, what should I give up for him? I got 3 trades that have actually taken place in real Dynasty leagues, and again, I want David Bell over on all 3 of these deals here. The first one, David Bell for Jarvis Landry. Yes. Landry's going to probably have a solid season, probably put up wide receiver 3 numbers, maybe some wide receiver 2 weeks, and he'll beat David Bell this year. I'm pretty confident in that. I don't care. David Bell could be the next Jarvis Landry, right? They're both guys that are very talented. They're going to catch a lot of passes in their careers. It's the same kind of parallel in that sense, not freak athletes. I think David Bell long-term, especially in Dynasty, I want him there. Jarvis Landry's not going to give you enough, even as a contender, to really make it worth this, to give it that kind of upside. Give me David Bell. The next one here, a 2023 second in a 1-quarterback league. That's important for David Bell. Yes. Right now he's a 2022 second. So I'll give up a 2023 second for David Bell. That's fine. He's a guy, again, even with a loaded draft class, I think David Bell is positioned very well next season to compete with a lot of those rookies and really kind of show out, again, as a sophomore or a second-year guy. I'll take David Bell over the random second. And then David Bell or Tyler Boyd. That's tough. That one's tougher for the sole reason of Tyler Boyd runs a lot of routes. He has the potential to have good seasons, obviously still in Cincinnati, but he is the wide receiver 3. David Bell's just the upside, right? Again, I hate saying upside, but that's what a David Bell trade is about. It's about projecting forward. Tyler Boyd is better right now. He's the better fantasy asset this season. I don't know if it's that way in 2 years. And because of that, I want David Bell. I want the chance at a guy that it could give you, consistent wide receiver 2 numbers, something Tyler Boyd is probably not going to do at this point in his career. Moving on to our next guy here, it is Brian Robinson of the Washington Commanders. And if you're on Twitter, if you've paid attention to the last week in the preseason, things are not going well for Antonio Gibson, right? The day I'm recording this, he was running with the punt team. He was running with the 3s. He eventually got back and ran with the 1s. But he is going to be in the doghouse, and if he fumbles again this season, Brian Robinson could take over that job. Now, Brian Robinson is not as good as Antonio Gibson. I think it'd be a dumb move on Ron Rivera's part. However, Ron Rivera is going to do what Ron Rivera is going to do. And if he wants to bench Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson becomes an extremely interesting handcuff, a guy that was drafted in the 3rd round of this year's NFL draft. Clearly, they're looking for a potential replacement to Antonio Gibson. That's why they tagged Brian Robinson here in the 3rd on day 2. That's what matters, right? The draft capital is what we care about. Antonio Gibson cannot stop fumbling. The coaching staff hates it. Brian Robinson is handpicked by this coaching staff. Those are important things, right? Things outside of fantasy where, Gibson is better. He's a better receiver. He's a better runner. That doesn't really matter to the Commanders, it seems. Brian Robinson is going to get some work, not enough to be relevant. It's going to take a fumble or an Antonio Gibson injury. But again, another one of those handcuffs that are extremely interesting, right? If you saw our late round Dynasty stashes, same reasons I like Hassan Haskins. Another handcuff that is going late in drafts that can be picked up and potentially give you week 2 or RB2 value at any moment's notice. That's what you want. So Brian Robinson fits that bill. And when you're looking again at trades that have taken place already, a 2023 3rd in a Superflex league for Brian Robinson. I'll get rid of a 3rd for pretty much anybody. I don't care. Especially a running back that was drafted on day 2. Right, again, not that Brian Robinson's going to be a world beater, but he looked good in limited action, and right now he is a known commodity over the complete unknown of a 3rd 365 days from now. No thanks, I'll take Robinson here. Another one, Robinson or Isaiah McKenzie. 2 upside pieces, that's really what this is. To me, it's a depth trade, right? If you have a million running backs and Robinson's never going to see your roster and you need wide receivers with potential upside, sure, make the deal for Isaiah McKenzie, but 9 times out of 10, I value the running back depth over wide receiver depth that is potentially replaceable, even with all the quote-unquote upside that the slot role could bring in Buffalo. I'll take Robinson, just again, and in a vacuum, may depend on your teams there. And the last deal here, we have Brian Robinson and a 2023 3rd for a 2023 2nd. If it's a high 2023 2nd, especially in a Superflex league, get rid of Brian Robinson. Don't hold on to the handcuff for that, especially with this draft class. But if that is a late 2nd, you're talking, 10, 11, or 12 in the 2nd round, I think Brian Robinson and the 2023 3rd is enough to pivot, right? You're getting a potential handcuff RB2, right, given injury, for moving back 7-8 spots potentially in a draft or something in that range. I think that's worth it. But again, if it's a high 2nd, take the 2nd and run. That's an easy trade. Don't deal with that, or don't make that mistake of holding on to perceived upside, because the 2nd should give you a player that has a more defined role in their offense next season. And to close us out, we have Trey McBride, the tight end out of Colorado State, now with the Arizona Cardinals. And this is a tight end premium trade, right? I'm not trading for rookie tight ends in non-tight end premium leagues. There's enough talent out there. I think you'll be fine. But Trey McBride in a tight end premium league is extremely interesting, right? Obviously, a 2nd round pick in this year's draft. His last season, his senior year in college, he puts up a 90 for 1,100 yard stat line with only 1 touchdown. I'm going to consider that fluky, but 90 for 1,100 yards. You don't find that kind of receiving talent or production at the tight end very often. You just don't. And in a tight end premium league, a guy that can catch those type of passes, can do what he does after the catch, that's really difficult to find, right? Now, he's not Kyle Pitts. He's not that superstar tight end, but he does offer intriguing upside, similar to potentially a TJ Hawkinson or a Dalton Schultz at this point in his career. That's what you could have in Trey McBride with a little bit more athleticism, right? Again, very similar actually to TJ Hawkinson. That's intriguing. Now, if you're making trades, you're giving up, again, a late 2023 second in a non-superflex league. That is the going price basically for Trey McBride, because in tight end premium, he's a mid-second, or at least he very well should be. The only reason you'd be able to flip him for a 2023 second is obviously the appeal, the allure of that specific draft class. Most years you're not going to be able to trade a second rounder for a future second rounder. That just doesn't make a lot of sense. That is not the case right now. And if you're thinking, well, what's the path forward? Zach Ertz is 32 years old. He'll be 33 next year, and they have an out on his contract in 2024. Trey McBride is a long-term hold. You trade for him, you throw him on your taxi squad, and then you just kind of forget about him and let the hype build, because it's going to, especially heading into next season. He could carry Dallas Goedert type hype, funny enough, behind Zach Ertz, and the calls could get louder and louder, especially as that team looks for more athleticism with DeAndre Hopkins aging. Again, Zach Ertz aging. There's just a lot going on there and a lot of moving pieces where in 2 years he could find himself as the second option. Is that a guarantee? No, of course not. And it's risky to trade for guys with the expectation of in 2 years this is going to pay off. But Trey McBride is one of the exceptions to that right now. So keep an eye on Trey McBride. Again, the going price is pretty cheap. You can give up, Jarvis Landry, Tyler Boyd, 23 seconds, whatever it is. Throw something out there. He shouldn't be valued too highly, especially because it is a long-term deal. So keep that in mind when you're making moves for him. All right, that is all we have for you. Again, guys, if you like what we're doing here at FYF, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Questions, comments, trade advice, all of that, drop it down below. As always, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.